Oh man, I've got so much stuff to take care of today in real life.
Yeah, man, I'm feeling hella lazy today. I don't know what to do,
But I want to make gains. What do I do?
Worry not, fellow escapers. Here's my top 5 AFK activities for you to do.
Yay! These activities will be put in no particular order, but we'll be discussing their benefits, their barrier to entries, and how AFK they actually are. So get lazy in your chair while we grind away some AFK.
Number 1.
Our first entry is a huge one and my personal favorite. And realistically, it should be considered a 3-for-1. So opening up with a bit of a bonus here, and that is farming Troves. Either Bik, Ful, or Wen. Each of these have a medium to high barrier to entry, as each of these you should at least unlock the overcharged Shadow of Pontifex ring. Let's start with Bik. Bik Trove farming has a wide level of range of AFK ability, from low to high, depending on how much you care about your XP. As if you don't care about your XP so much, you can have a full 6 minutes of AFK, but if you do care about XP, it's probably closer to a minute or two. As for the barrier to entry with Bik Troves, I call it a mid to high level barrier of entry. This requires a minimum of either 88 fishing, hunter, mining, or woodcutting. Of all of these, my go-to is fishing because that is the most AFK. To do this most effectively, and I personally would not do this without this, we want a complete set of any shark outfit, ideally the Fury Shark outfit. And this is because these outfits have the ability to consume fish. This means that you can stay here indefinitely with little to no upkeep cost. With a fully upgraded and overcharged Shadow Pontifex ring, you'll be able to collect 1 Trove every 6 minutes, meaning to get around 6k anima an hour and 10 Bik Troves. While fishing with my setup, I've been averaging about 150k fishing XP an hour. If you're a main, each of these Bik Troves have an average value of 416k as of writing the script, meaning you'll make around 4 mil an hour before costs, which are minimal. For me personally, I have a foot pedal tied to my left mouse click, and I just leave my mouse and hovering over one of the fishing spots, and just tap my pedal every minute or two and whenever I'm doing anything else. For the gear and setup, I like to use the full Fury Shark outfit, a fishing cape, a Grace of the Elves for the Siren Spirits, a Luck of the Dwarves for my copium of getting a Hazelmetal Signet ring, and either a Bik Book or a Brooch of the Gods, as well as a fishing rod-o-matic or a crystal fishing rod perked out with Hone 6 and Prosper and Furnace 4 Fortunate 3. Although my personal rod actually has Impsoled 6 instead of Furnace 4 Fortunate 3, as I really don't care too much about the skilling perks, and I like saving on porters when I'm actually fishing for my food. If you're not an Ironman, I would actually take this one step further and add Spirit Attraction potions to the mix. With the potion reservoir, you won't even have to worry about missing your Siren Spirits, your Catalyst alterations, or your Divine Blessing. When we're talking about AFKing for Ful Troves, we're talking about Tezekar trash mob farming on wave 4 of the Zuck fight. I would rate its AFK ability as low to mid, as you do have to constantly press your special action keybind, but outside of that, you get 6 full minutes of semi-AFK, where you only have to press 4 keybinds every 12 minutes. In order to reach this level of AFK ability, however, it does have a very large barrier of entry, as to pay that kind of attention, you need fairly high gear, extremely high stats, very good perks, and access to some of the best potions. As I said, the reason I call it semi-AFK is because you do have to press that special action button. The way I handle that is similarly to how I handle my Bik Trove farming, and I just tie my foot pedal onto that key and just press it every now and again. For my personal setup with this, I have a Superior Sea Singer hood, top, and leg. The top and legs are perked with Enhanced Devoted 4, Scavenging 4 with Looting, and a random Demon Slayer and Undead Slayer combination. These perks are not actually optimal, however, as ideally you would have Impatient 4 comboed with Devoted 4 and a form of Biting instead of my Slayer perks. However, I did not have the components to make that happen, unfortunately. In our necklace slot, we have an Arcane Blood necklace. For our gloves, we want Cinderbane gloves for the additional damage, and our boots, I personally use my enhanced Blast Diffusion boots, but the base Blast Diffusion boots will be just fine. Feel free to upgrade and downgrade as necessary. For our pocket slot item, I personally use a Scripture of Ful, as it is more than self-sustaining. For our weapon, we'll be using an Inquisitor staff, ideally perked with Caraming 4 Equilibrium 2, although mine personally has Precise 6 Ruthless 1 and Aftershock 4 Equilibrium 2, as I really don't want to farm out another staff specifically for this. We're also going to be needing a cape. Unfortunately, our cape slot didn't actually fit in this last screen, but you're either going to want a hybrid Zuck cape or the magic Zuck cape. For our consumables, we're either going to be using an Elder Overload salve or a combination of Elder Overloads and Super Prayer Renewal potions. We also want to be using Weapon Poison +++, and I like taking a couple of emergency food and super restores or my blessed flask with me for just in case purposes. As for the prayer we're going to be using, we're going to keep it with just Deflect Melee, as when we're only using Deflect Melee, the prayer renewal and the prayer potion from either our super prayer renewal or the Elder Overload salve will actually sustain our prayer perfectly without any other assistance. While recording this, I realized I forgot to talk about which runes we're going to be taking with us when talking about our gear and inventory. The runes we're going to be taking depends on which spell we're going to be casting, and the spell we're going to be casting depends on which weapon we're taking with us. This is the reason that I recommended taking an Inquisitor's Staff, because with the Inquisitor's Staff, the rune pouches need to be carrying enough runes to either cast Bloodburst or Shadowburst. However, if we don't have an Inquisitor's Staff, we'll be using the Barrage equivalent. For sustainability purposes, this is the reason that I highly recommend using an Inquisitor's Staff. We will also want enough runes to be casting Animate Dead alongside of our combat spell. In order for this to work, we need a good Revo++ bar designed around AoE, stunning early and often, and some additional survivability. On screen now is the bar that I personally use, since I don't have all the best unlocks for this method. However, it does work and suffice with the gear unlocks that I have. There are some slight adjustments that you can make if you have Magma Tempest or Greater Sonic Wave. If you're struggling with survivability, I would suggest moving Devotion or Sacrifice up in a higher priority slot. We want to start the fight with Zuck and complete the fight all the way up to wave 4, after which we will run to this specific tile. You can tell this tile by going into the cove by the stalagmite on the western wall and moving 4 paces to the north and 5 paces to the east. On one of my non-primary bars, I have my Overload Salve, my Weapon Poison, and Animate Dead on keybinds that are near each other. I will hit my Overload key every 6 minutes and my Weapon Poison and my Animate Dead key every other time that I overload. With every hour you do this, you can expect around 10 mil in loot with a good mixture of runes, herbs, bolt tips, gems, seeds, and of course, troves. Unfortunately, as of recording this, Zuck Troves are not worth nearly as much as Bik Troves, with an average of 138k each. However, the other loot more than makes up for this. Best of all, we're actually profiting Zuck pages. I basically have enough Zuck pages to last a lifetime thanks to this method. On a side note, I do believe this is actually possible to do with similar results with Necromancy. However, I have a lot of testing to do on this. I have a video idea based around this method, so if you're interested in a larger guide and a loot from video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can catch that. And now we have AFKing Wen Troves by AFKing the Archglacior. Again, with a mid to high level barrier of entry and a medium level of AFK ability, just shy of 3 minutes AFK time as to make sure you do not lose drops. I'm not going to talk too much about this as Iron Araxor has a fantastic video on this, hitting a massive 60k Archglacior kills, link in the description below. I highly recommend checking the video out on this if you're interested, but the idea is AFKing 0 or 1 mechanic Archglacior. In his video, he has a 0 input cost setup for this, so if you're looking at doing something completely free to do with a mid-level of AFK ability, I highly suggest doing this. On top of the Troves, similarly to the Zuck, this method will be self-sustaining and then some for Wen pages. AFKing these Troves are my current go-to AFK plans, as I have a fun video planned in the future, probably in the distant future, so be sure to subscribe to catch that. But we've spent enough time on Troves. Let's move on to
Number 2.
the next thing we're going to be talking about is AFKing combat. Since AFKing combat is extremely variable based on your gear, levels, and what you want to AFK, combat always has a wide range in how accessible it is and how AFK it actually is. There's plenty of great monsters to AFK and many great guides on how to AFK them. And while we talked about Wave 4 Zuck, which is one of my personal favorites, there's plenty of very commonly done ones that many know about and talk about often, like Abbey Demons, Armored Phantoms, Bound Skeletons, Capsarius, and Spiritual Warriors. I want to talk about a couple more niche ones that provide oddball benefits that people don't really talk about. First, we have Blood Nihils in a player-owned Slayer dungeon. Toss a couple in a room, throw on some mage tank armor, and have at it. Keep a charged Grace of the Elves in your inventory and put it on while looting, and you'll have about 3 minutes of AFK at a time. The main reason you would want to do this is for the 100 or so vampire fangs that you get in an hour while doing this, but you also get the side benefit of more elder energies than you can use on pouches and conversions, allowing you to profit divine charges. You'll also receive a healthy stack of blood runes, onyx bolt tips, lantidimes, and Zamorak wines. On screen now, I'll show the recommended gear, bar, and inventory setup provided by Reddit user Kibium to AFK these. A link to his Reddit post where he talks about how the method is done will yet again be provided as a link in the description below. I personally have tested this with the setup I use for AFKing Wave 4 Zuck with the same bar provided by Kibium minus Magma Tempest, as I don't have it, and it does still indeed work. So obviously you can upgrade and downgrade as necessary. I'm personally planning on grabbing some Nihils and sticking them in my player-owned Slayer dungeon very soon, as I am running very low, so I'm going to probably grind these out to get a healthy stack of Nihils in the very near future. Next, we have Spiritual Mages. Similarly to Spiritual Warriors, these are great to AFK for some God Wars 1 dungeon components, which you'll always need more of for all the random gear sets we need to make as Ironmen. But with the side benefit of the rune that we always need, especially if you mage bosses a lot, which is soul runes. While it's not as profitable for mains or irons alike when compared to spiritual warriors, and soul runes are not as mandatory since the FSOA rework, it can still be worth it if you enjoy maging as an Ironman. A couple of years ago, Duoscape put out a really good video that has a very low input cost method that makes it even more AFK just needing to loot. Again, link in the description below. These were my go-to AFK for a long time and funded several attempts at Impatient 4 Devoted 4, which I unfortunately still have never gotten. And finally, we have AFK Bossing. I'm not going to go too deep into this one as there are a plethora of guides out there, but if you're looking for some low-effort log progress, you can't go wrong with AFKing a large number of bosses in this game that we can AFK. Things like Kriara, Brardor, Krill, Ziliana, Mole, KBD, Vindicta, Gregorvik, Helweir, or any of the others. Let's move on to
Number 3.
Next one on the list is Dream of Iaia skilling. The Dream of Iaia has a fairly high barrier to entry, being the Extinction quest. However, it also comes with the highest level of AFK ability of anything on this list, the full 10 minutes of the logout timer, meaning in an hour we only need to click 6 times. With the Dream of Iaia, the only downside is the time lock, since the Dream of Iaia uses Anachronia resources. The skills we can train on the Dream of Iaia are Herblore, Fishing, Fletching, Hunter, Construction, and Crafting. Each skilling station can hold a total of 350,000 experience stored, and you gain that in about an hour, so every time you max a skilling station out, you have a full hour of AFK time. XP is not the only benefit here, however. You can gain a plethora of items, including food for your player-owned farm animals, laboratory relics for money or components, all of the ranch out of time animals, all the base camp resources, including the upgrade items, and it's probably one of the quickest and most reliable ways to get bone blowpipe pieces, which, if you want to have the absolute best setup, is the override used for ranged weapons. It's also the only way to get the ever-elusive Necklace of Salamancy, a best-in-slot necklace for the Rex Matriarchs and dinosaurs that buffs the drop rates of dinosaurs and increases damage dealt. A huge deal if you're looking for the Matriarch's log. Let's move on to
Number 4.
The next one I want to talk about is some hyper AFK Divination. I would call Divination a mid-level of AFK with a mid to high level barrier of entry. You'll need 95 Divination and 101 Invention for this to work. Now, while it's far more efficient to do Divination slightly more active with the Divine Conversion Relic, Divination is still a fairly good thing to do AFK with Divine Omatic as well as some empty Divine Charges. For this method, you'll want an Elder Divination outfit or any Divination outfit if you have it, as well as ideally having the Divination Cape. Like all skilling, a Grace of the Elves or either a Brochure of the Gods or a Bik book would be good as well. You could also use a Superior Energy Gathering Scrimshaw, as it has a very low cost of 2 bones for a Scrimshaw, giving a 20% chance of doubling your energy gathered, which stacks with the Muspah Familiar. You're going to want to hop to World 79, as this is the official Divination world and there's always an Elder Wisp spawn. Furthermore, the more people on a Wisp, the longer it survives. The reason we want to use the vacuum is your inventory will never fill until you fill all your divine charges in your vacuum. But if you want to AFK more, the empty charges are also stackable. So when you have your 100 divine charges filled in your vacuum, you can just refill it with more empty ones in your inventory. The only downside to really doing divination like this is that while you get charged, you don't get the energies, meaning you will not be able to make any of the other divination items, as well as getting overall less energy, but it is far more AFK.
Number 5.
And our next AFK method is Prifdinous Thieving. While Prif Thieving requires you to have a thieving level to the mid to high 90s, I'd still call this barrier to entry fairly low, as thieving is arguably one of the fastest skills in the game. It has a mid to high level of AFK, as it gets better and better in AFK ability the more and more unlocks you have. Things like the thieving outfit, thieving cape will greatly increase your AFK. And you can further increase this with things like Crystal Mask and Light Form, increasing your chance of success. With each district giving you several beneficial items like potions, porters, divine energy, general skilling supplies, food, and clues, if you don't know what direction you want to go in, you can't go wrong with stealing from these guys. Speaking of thieving, the skill in general gives plenty of benefits to your account and is just a super AFK skill in general. With enough thieving boost and Crystal Mask, thieving can give you a full 5 minutes of AFK at the Cruxical Knights, giving almost a million XP during a 5-finger discount aura. Furthermore, if you don't really care about how quickly you gain XP, you could just take yourself down to Bandits and the Desert Bandit cap. These bandits can be fully AFK'd for the duration of the lobby timer for about 350k XP an hour. Not super beneficial like the rest of this list, but a fun little tidbit if you only want to click 6 times in an hour. And that's it. That's our list. 5 of my personal favorite and in my opinion some of the most rewarding activities to AFK if you're feeling a bit burnt out on your Ironman. So I want to know, what are your favorite things to AFK? Leave it in the comments section below. Since this is a massive game and we all have different goals for ourselves, something that I find useful may not be useful to everybody. Thanks for watching, be sure to like and subscribe, and as always, have a wonderful day.